Bread is our staple food. The flour that is used to make it is ground from wheat grown both at home and abroad. In Great Britain, 3/5 of the wheat is imported. Have you ever thought of how this bread is made? At our chief ports, grain ships from Canada and other countries are unloaded by machines known as grain elevators. From the elevators, huge pipes are lowered into the ship's hold. These suck the grain up out of the ship. The grain unloaded by the elevators is transferred to barges which carry it to the mills. Homegrown wheat also comes to the mill by barge or rail. Suction pipes are used here as well to unload the barges. These pipes carry the grain straight into the mill. Inside the mill, the stream of grain flows along a belt into large storage tanks. As the grain pours in, a workman measures its level to make sure that the tank does not overflow. These tanks are made of hardwood and are built to allow for expansion. Before the grain can be ground into flour, it receives a very thorough cleaning. First, it is scoured. And then it is passed through the sifters, strange rotating boxes which extract impurities either larger or smaller than the grains of wheat. Other small impurities, which may still remain, are got rid of by passing the grain through this brushing machine, in which currents of air circulate. After this careful preparation, the grain passes down to the roller mills. Two rollers, revolving at different speeds, separate the grain from the husk and grind the wheat into flour. The flour at this stage is fairly coarse, but it passes through a number of roller mills which gradually break it down into the finished flour. Machines feed the flour into sacks and check the weight. Each sack, when filled, weighs 140 pounds. The filled sack, firmly tied at the mouth, is tipped down a chute to the loading bay. Here, the weight of the sacks is checked once more as they move on a conveyor belt to the point where they can be loaded by hand onto lorries to be sent out to bakeries. This particular flour is being delivered to a small bakery employing only a few people. In many localities, there are bakers who have their own bakehouses, and in these, most of the work is done by hand. This baker is just starting to make a new batch of bread. First, the flour is poured into the mixer. 3 sackfuls, 420 pounds of flour, go into the bowl. Ordinary water is added and also salt dissolved in water. The bowl begins to rotate. Then yeast is added. And the whole mixture is kneaded into a mass of dough. Fully mixed, the dough is shot in a room and left to settle in a trough. Fermentation of the yeast causes the dough to rise. Three hours later, the dough is ready to be shaped into loaves. It is cut into pieces of equal weight, which are placed in tins. Next, the oven temperature is checked and finishing touches are added. Loaves are set in the oven in batches of about 120. Some loaves of special shape are baked without tins. Once it is baked, the batch is drawn from the oven and assistants wearing gloves made of yeast bags quickly tip the loaves out of the tins and place them on trays to cool until they're ready to be sent out to the shop. There is a great contrast between the small bakery where the work is done by hand and the large modern steam bakeries where machines are used at every stage. Flour, salt, water and yeast are fed by machines into the mixing bowls. The dough is left in the mixing bowls for about 3 hours to give it time to rise. Production is continuous at this type of bakery, so that as one batch of dough begins its 3 hours wait, another in the queue is ready to be shaped into loaves. The mass of dough is tipped down the chute to a lower floor. A machine cuts it into pieces of precise size and weight. Another machine rolls these pieces of dough into balls and tips them onto an endless belt with cloth cups in which the dough can settle. The yeast is still very active, and these balls of dough in their cloth cups are carried up into a moist chamber where they move to and fro until the yeast has had its full effect. Then more machines take on the work of giving the balls of dough their final shape and weighing them once again. The dough is put in tins and left for another 45 minutes before going into the oven. The small hand bakery dealt with one batch of loaves at a time, but here baking is a continuous process. The tins of dough travel very slowly through the oven. 1,000 loaves pass through each oven every hour, and at the end of their 45 minutes journey, they are fully baked. The loaves from several different ovens are sent down chutes to a place where they can be loaded onto trays to cool. Now, delivery vans take the fresh bread to the shops. Most people have to go to the shop each day to buy their bread, but many bakeries still maintain their own runsmen to deliver bread to the customer's door. To millions of homes, the baker's man is a familiar, friendly figure, someone to be relied on, the last link in the long chain of people who work to bring you your daily bread.